I want you to hit me as hard as you can.
Oh, for me? Why, I don't know what to say. Hit the road, Bucky!
Hello, and welcome back to Animation Movies Revisited, where we take a look back at some of the greatest animated films and rediscover the reasons they've left a lasting impression throughout the years. In this episode, we'll be investigating the 40th and fourth wall-breaking Walt Disney Pictures animated classic, The Emperor's New Groove. Directed by Mark Dindal, who helmed Cats Don't Dance in 1997, Chicken Little in 2005, and will soon direct Chris Pratt as Jim Davis's Monday-hating, lasagna-loving cat in Garfield. The Emperor's New Groove is an animated buddy comedy set in an Incan empire, where a narcissist by the name of Emperor Kuzco, voiced by SNL alum David Spade, is vindictively transformed into a llama by a mad scientist named Yzma. Left with little choice but to embark on a life-altering road trip with a kind-hearted peasant named Pacha, Kuzco soon discovers that the world doesn't revolve around him, and that being heartless only guarantees loneliness. The seed of the film was planted in 1994, when the concept was conceived as an epic musical titled Kingdom of the Sun. Roger Allers, who co-created the original story with Matthew Jacobs, partnered with English musician Sting and his collaborator David Hartley to develop a rousing musical backdrop inspired by South America's ancient Incas. According to Allers, his version of the tale centered on Pacha, who was originally voiced by Lightning McQueen himself, Owen Wilson. As a llama herder who loves the sun, Pacha believed that there was a way to bring light into any situation, and so when Pacha comes to the city and is appointed to a position of leadership, he aspires to revamp the community into something special. When reading the original draft for Kingdom of the Sun, Emperor Kuzco's name was originally Manco Capac, who was the first lord of the city of Cuzco in the ancient story of the Incan Empire. As it turns out, the name Manco refers to something unseemly in some countries, and so the writers eventually changed it to Kuzco. After cribbing some notes from Mark Twain's The Prince and the Pauper, the original plot found Kuzco and Pacha looking physically identical to one another and trading places. This element of the story would eventually come to haunt the creative team, as it created a situation where neither character stood out as the film's primary protagonist. Another aspect of the original draft presents a different spin on the movie's villain, Yzma, voiced by the perfect Batman actress, Eartha Kitt. Originally, Yzma was a once beautiful sorceress who blamed the sun for her fading looks. Repulsed by her own reflection, Yzma strived to summon a shadowy being named Supai, who would then cast an everlasting shadow across the ancient land. In Allers' version, Yzma eventually succeeds in conjuring Supai, but the dark being is snuffed out by the sun, which Pacha lassos like Wonder Woman and pulls toward the earth. Astrophysics be damned! Thanks for watching our show. If you like what you see, like this video and click on the bell to receive notifications every time a new one goes up. Now back to the show. With so many ambitious ideas, an army of talented animators working around the clock, and a potentially award-winning soundtrack arranged by Sting, there was simply no way the project's executive producers, Thomas Schumacher and Peter Schneider, wouldn't fall in love with Kingdom of the Sun. Right? Well, as it turns out, both Schumacher and Schneider were woefully underwhelmed by what they had seen during a test screening of the film, and indelicately demanded that it be remade. Thus, the Prince and the Pauper angle of the story was thrown out, and Owen Wilson was replaced with Monsters, Inc. and Paranorman voice actor and The Big Lebowski's best friend, John Goodman. Other elements of the story and its characters were also dropped from the film, including Yzma's original sidekick, an ornery Incan statue named Hakua, voiced by Mrs. Doubtfire and Death to Smoochie actor Harvey Feinstein. Other characters that were sacrificed to the writing room floor were a self-absorbed llama named Snowball, 3 mummies named Mick, Bowie, and Lemmy after popular rock musicians, and finally, Kuzco's fiancée, a no-nonsense Spitfire named Nina. After dismal test screenings, a laundry list of creative differences, and a tonal shift that had the film becoming more of a slapstick comedy than an epic Incan-inspired musical, Allers reached his limit and decided to leave the project. The Kingdom of the Sun had vanished like the myths it was based upon, and the movie that would eventually become The Emperor's New Groove started to rise.
I don't know about you, but I'm getting all funned out.
Uh-oh.
Don't tell me. We're about to go over a huge waterfall.
Yep,
Sharp rocks at the bottom?
most likely.
Bring it on.
The revised version of the movie still finds David Spade as the voice of Emperor Kuzco, with John Goodman as an aged-up version of Pacha, who in the new story is a gentle village leader whose ancestral home is in danger of being torn down. The legendary Eartha Kitt is still making movie magic as the voice of Yzma, though her quest for restorative beauty had been left on the cutting room floor and replaced with a desire for power and revenge. A new character was also added to the mix by way of Kronk, Yzma's simple-minded henchman. Inspired by actor Rick Rossovich, known to many as Slider from Top Gun, and Dr. John Taglieri from the medical TV drama ER, comedy writer David Reynolds championed Patrick Warburton to provide the voice for Kronk after witnessing his side-splitting performance as Elaine's on-again, off-again boyfriend Putty from the comedy series about nothing, Seinfeld. Rounding out the main cast are Wendy Malick as the voice of Chicha, Pacha's authoritative and clever wife, Kellyanne Kelso as the couple's daughter, Chaka, and Eli Russell Lynette's as their son, Tipo. Last but not least, you've got the Las Vegas legend, Tom Jones, as the voice of Emperor Kuzco's theme song guy.
Theme song guy.
Oh yeah! He's the sovereign of the nation. He's the hippest cat in creation.
But we'll talk more about that in just a moment. If you've seen The Emperor's New Groove, you're already aware that much of Sting's music that he wrote for Kingdom of the Sun was dropped from the new storyline. Feeling galvanized by the thought of his efforts being stripped from the film, Sting reduced his contribution to just a few songs, including the movie's spirited opening number, Perfect World. Originally, the filmmakers wanted Sting to provide the vocals for the song, but Sting refused, saying that he was too old to perform such a dynamic number and that it calls for a younger and hipper vocalist. In the end, Disney contracted Tom Jones for the track, who, as it turns out, is 11 years older than Sting. After several vocally intensive songs were dropped from the project, it fell to American composer John Debney to fill the film with a versatile score that would accompany Kuzco and Pacha on their transformational journey across the empire. With only a year and a half left on the clock until the film needed to be completed, 400 artists and 300 technicians switched into overdrive, favoring character flourishes and personality over lavish special effects and monumental set pieces. In fact, to give each character their expressive edge, the artists and animators studied footage of the voice actors for inspiration. David Spade's arrogance? Check. John Goodman's warmth and wisdom? Check. Eartha Kitt's wild and wicked facial contortions? Boom, baby! The team also used reference photos and drawings they'd acquired while on a research trip to Peru. These tools were then used to influence them while creating the film's characters and locales. In addition to reflecting the sophistication of ancient South American culture, the team wanted Kuzco's empire to feel like an Incan-inspired Las Vegas. Additionally, animators used CGI technology to create specific objects within the film, such as Pacha's cart or the broken tree trunk that Kuzco and Pacha ride down a raging river of death. Each item contained a number of imperfections in order to make them look and move as realistically as possible. At the time of its theatrical release, The Emperor's New Groove only managed $170 million in worldwide receipts. When you stop and consider the project's budget of $100 million and 6 years worth of development, it's easy to see why the House of Mouse would view the film as a disappointment. Thankfully, numbers don't always equate to a film's lasting appeal, and I'm thrilled to say that The Emperor's New Groove managed to find plenty of fans after its initial release. Some would say it's a cult classic among animation enthusiasts, but does such a thing exist when Disney's name is on the label? While The Emperor's New Groove didn't move the needle as much as some of Disney's other animated classics, it did receive a sequel in 2005 titled Kronk's New Groove. The feature reprises the roles of Spade, Goodman, Kitt, Warburton, and Malick, with John Mahoney and Tracy Ullman also joining the cast. As the title would suggest, the film focuses on Kronk and his desire to win the affections of his judgmental father. By the close of the adventure, Kronk learns that not everyone's path is the same, and that he'd rather be rich in friends than spend his days trying to live up to someone else's expectations. Following Kronk's New Groove was an animated television series on the Disney Channel titled The Emperor's New School. While Kit, Warburton, and Malick reprised their roles for the series, Spade was replaced by J.P. Mano, and Fred Tatasciore voiced Pacha in the first season. Goodman then reprised his role for the second and final season of the series. In addition to the sequel and television series, 2 video games were developed for The Emperor's New Groove. The first was an action platformer developed by Argonaut Games for release on the Sony PlayStation console. The second, also an action platforming adventure, was unleashed on Nintendo's handheld marvel at the time, the Game Boy Color. Despite having every line of dialogue committed to memory, and the film being responsible for my ability to engage in casual conversation with an array of woodland creatures, I'll be giving The Emperor's New Groove 7 Buzz Lightyears out of 10. While I admire the film's exotic art, dry wit, memorable characters, and delightful use of seven-door farce comedy, the story feels a little too familiar in a world full of animated films where valuable lessons are learned and friendship triumphs over greed. I think The Emperor's New Groove excels in its ability to blend mature comedy with family-friendly jokes. I would even go so far as to say it helped set the table for future fauna-funny films like Madagascar and Ice Age. Few of Disney's animated classics make me laugh the way that The Emperor's New Groove does, and much of that is thanks to the film's stellar cast. David Spade and John Goodman are both accomplished comedians, and so it's likely they went off during recording sessions, ad-libbing and coming up with character quirks that help make The Emperor's New Groove feel more dynamic than your typical kids' movie. Furthermore, the film boasts memorable characters and world designs that help it stand out amongst Disney's vast pantheon of animated classics. Think about it. There isn't a single throwaway character featured in this film. Everyone from the old man who gets thrown out of windows to the waitress Mata who slings steaming pillbug platters at Matka's meat hut all bring unforgettable moments in dialogue to this clever film. I think The Emperor's New Groove stands out as a brilliant experiment for Disney, even if the formula could have used a few tweaks. It's inspired, packs plenty of laughs for both kids as well as adults, and manages to remain inoffensive throughout, which is not something that can be said about Disney's older animations. The film is also endlessly quotable. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people shout the words, "Why do we even have that lever?" or "No touchy, no touch," throughout the years. Hell, I even make my own theme music from time to time, especially when I'm trying not to wake anyone in my house during the early hours. Lastly, The Emperor's New Groove has taught me 2 valuable lessons that I'll never forget. 1. Be sure to think twice before you throw off a person's groove. And second, if you ever get lost in the woods and need to ask a squirrel for directions, just remember these important words. Squeakity squeak, squeak squeakums.
Squeaking.
I'm so proud of you guys.